Good afternoon, everyone. This is Allie Masardo, Association Manager of PPRA. Thank you for joining us today for the roadresource.org webinar, Prioritizing Road Project by Impact, Calculate Cost-Benefit Value. This is the third webinar in a series of 5 that are planned for this year. We do have you all on mute for the webinar, and we'll be using the chat function for any questions. Questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. A brief introduction before we begin. Lindsay Matoush is President and CEO, and Grace Ansberry is an account executive at Vario Consulting, the marketing firm that has partnered with PPRA to create roadresource.org. Over the course of the year, they will be presenting a series of webinars on roadresource.org. James Golden III, founder and CEO of Pavement Management Group, will be assisting Lindsay and Grace today. We also have representation from Ema Aaron Issa, Scott Ostemacher, Asphalt Materials, Inc., Stephen Garrity Asphalt Reclaiming, and Rex Eberly, Birdcamp, Inc., to assist with any technical questions. We will now turn the webinar over to Lindsay and Grace.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining our webinar on cost-benefit value. This, as Allie said, this is the third in a series of 5 webinars that we're leading in order to share the learnings that we are having about how roadway managers across North America are gaining ground with their networks. As Allie mentioned, I'm Lindsay Matoush, the founder and CEO at Vario, and Grace is an account executive for us. And we are the third-party builders and developers and researchers behind the site. From a research perspective, we explored on behalf of the associations what are agencies interested in learning about pavement preservation, recycling, and emulsions, and how can the industry best serve them and helping them gain ground on the network. And Road Resource is a large part of that response. These webinars are another part of that response. So we're happy to have the opportunity today to share with you more in depth one of the really powerful tools on Road Resource. Also joining us today is James Golden. James Golden is the founder and CEO of Pavement Management Group. He got his start with the world of pavement management while finishing his associate degree of drafting design technology from Central Ohio Technical College when he was 19. He has served as a pavement management specialist for over 20 years, helping public agencies improve roadway conditions through data-driven, standardized pavement management blueprints. And he's been very helpful to us in consulting on some of the tools in the site and sharing his learning from his expertise about how agencies can use some of these tools to approach their networks differently and stretch their resources further. So today, we will cover 4 things. We'll talk about agency needs. What are we hearing out there from agencies about what they need in developing smarter network management plans that stretch their resources? We'll cover the concept of cost-benefit value and what it means, how it works, why it works. Then we'll take you to the tool on the site that allows you to use cost-benefit value for your own network, and we'll run an example so you can see how that tool works. And then lastly, we'll cover some additional resources where if this is intriguing to you, you can learn more. We always like to give just a couple minutes on what roadresource.org is about. So Road Resource was built by Ema, Issa, and ERA, the 3 associations who represent emulsions, slurry, microsurfacing, and several other pavement preservation treatments, and asphalt recycling and reclaiming. And they came together to say, wow, agencies are really asking us to make it easy for them to have one place to come to learn more about all these concepts and how they work together. And in those conversations and the desire to collaborate, PPRA, the Pavement Preservation and Recycling Alliance, was born with this bigger vision to help agencies improve roads today and link that together for stronger networks tomorrow. We have a single promise that really has served as our guiding star in developing Road Resource, and that is this: to empower agencies to be the best possible stewards of their road networks and taxpayer dollars. And as we evaluated what was going to make the site and what tools would be most useful, it was always through the lens of this commitment. As we started the project, the project itself was about 2.5 years in research and development before roadresource.org went live. And to get there, we did a sizable research project in talking to agencies and roadway planners and decision makers all across North America to find out how they make choices about their roads and what they most needed from the industry. We uncovered 4 key themes that we saw really sort of separating agencies that were stretching their resources further and sort of making incremental gains each year in the overall condition of their network from those who were sort of seeing a slow deterioration or decline and struggling to reverse that trend. And so we were very interested to sort of say, okay, what are the traits common to those who are trending up and to the right? And we found these 4 things. I'm going to take them out of order for you. First, they had a robust arsenal of treatments. They are comfortable using a broad range of traditional as well as preservation and recycling treatments. And that gave them broader tools to pick from. They were drawing on the success and innovation of others in similar regions and climates. So they were connected to what people around them, or even across the country, but in a similar environment, were experiencing and where they were having success using some of these innovative preservation treatments to make their resources go further. Number 4, they were in touch with the industry at large. And they were paying attention to the research coming off the test tracks at NCAT. They were connected to what's happening at EMA and ERA and ISSA and NCPP and SP2, and they were watching what was happening in the industry at large, so they had their ear to the ground for treatments that could be advantageous to them. And number 2, and what we're talking about today, is they were always thinking with a network lens. It wasn't just, what am I going to do with this road? It was, how do I allocate my resources across my network year after year to make gains in my overall and average pavement condition? So those are 4 key traits that we observed, and this series is really about that network level consideration. Cost-benefit value being a very helpful building block in thinking about how to approach your annual plan. Upcoming topics for future webinars. This is a webinar calendar, so if you've missed any of these topics, you can find them on the website. Number 1 was remaining service life. Number 2, we talked about life cycle costs. And really what savings can add up over the life of a road, how you can get 40 years or more from your asphalt pavement. Today we're talking about cost-benefit value, and you can mark your calendars for those upcoming dates. We're also excited to announce, many of you got an email about this, that we are doing a super user training in St. Louis on October 9th. It's a 1-day training that will really take you through roadresource.org, and it's 500 pages to understand how those tools can be applied to your network. So if you're interested, please check the featured article section. We'll be publishing an article about that. There's limited space for that. That's, again, October 9th in St. Louis. So without further ado, we're going to take you to the concepts featured in Road Resource and how they can be advantageous to you. As we do that, we're going to introduce our guest speaker today, James Golden, and ask him to share with us some of what he has learned in his work with agencies around pavement management.
So James, would you mind joining us? This is Grace, by the way, everyone. We're going to talk through a little bit.
Hello, everyone. I think I'm in.
We gotcha. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Great. So we're going to have James talk a little bit about what he does to help solve agency needs. James, when an agency comes to you in search of a better method for their annual planning and road maintenance, what are the reasons that they come to you, and why is it important to approach our networks at a higher level?
That is a great question, sometimes a million-dollar question. So I get a lot of questions from local agencies, just like a lot of folks of you online right now, asking how do we look to develop, a more data-driven approach to the annual maintenance repair of our network. You're hearing from contractors or, outfits just like PPRA, what we're doing today through webinars and people just cold calling and knocking on your doors about new technologies and products that exist. But how do we monetize all that? What does it all mean? What is the ROI on all this type of stuff? And that's at the, in essence, what pavement management really is. It's about a network level approach to identifying the right treatment to the right pavement to apply at the right time to develop a more costly savings effort and to extend the life of your pavement network. So some of those questions I often get are, anything along the lines of, what are the benefits of, say, a Reclamite product or a rejuvenator or a surface treatment or a chip and seal, or, hey, James, I saw that, people are talking about asphalt pavements only lasting about 15 years. What is your experience behind all that? And that's when I start to talk about a data-driven approach. Through routine inspection, you can actually start tracking the deterioration of your pavements over time and start answering some of those questions for yourself while also leveraging outfits just like PPRA into tools such as cost benefit value that we're going to go over today. So those are just a few key things.
Great. Yeah, and what we've heard too is that there's a lot of struggles without having that data-driven approach. It feels a little bit either like guesswork or it feels sometimes political to prioritize roads.
Exactly. So what a data-driven approach, and you look at things from a network level perspective, it helps take the politics out of it. So for example, we all live in an environment where we've got, when you take a look at the impact that our pavement networks have on just everyday life, it reaches out and touches everyone, not just in public works and our engineering departments, but our businesses, our school districts, our civilians, all that good stuff, right? So, what we're looking at here is, I apologize, I got kind of sidetracked there for a second. From a data-driven approach, we're able to take a look at what is the ROI of that $500,000 budget that you've got or that $1 million budget you got. How are we best able to spend those funds in a fiscal responsible manner and while having the greatest impact to our pavements? So that way, let's look at a quick example. Let's say you have a small city and you've got 5 council districts and you've got 5 council representatives. Each one's barking loud that they have pavement needs, they have maintenance needs. Through a data-driven approach and network level analysis, you can quickly identify, through, like the PCI, for example, Pavement Condition Index, what areas are truly in need of attention. And by presenting that in a map-driven and data-driven format, you can get everyone in a communicative environment. So now we're just looking at things from a real data-driven perspective, not just because council member number 1 or the mayor or Mrs. Johnson, because she's called 5 times, barking really loud about the pavements. We're looking at everything holistically.
And what are some of the biggest challenges or mistakes you see when people sort of fall to that?
Well, number one, we're not maximizing the full potential of that budget. So if you've got $500,000 and you're on a worst to first approach, for example, and I think everyone on the call here understands what worst to first is. It's taking a look at who's screaming the loudest and trying to prioritize against your worst pavements. From a 0 to 100 perspective, if 0 is failed and 100 is excellent, we're spending all of our time, attention, resources, money, and effort at the bottom level fixing those roads, which we all know are very costly. So they're going to eat up our budget very quickly and have the least amount of impact in total miles that we're improving each year. So when you start thinking of it from that perspective and thinking maybe there's a better way, that's how all this stuff kind of comes together and helps solve those types of problems.
Exactly. Well, so we can get to it. Let's give the example exactly where we're starting. As you mentioned, we heard a lot of these same things during our research. I want to take the guesswork out of it, or I want to stop fixing one road at a time. I don't know how to start the process. And James, as you said, it all boils down to these data-driven decisions. And cost-benefit value is one of those. So the first thing that everyone should know on the call here today is that the website, roadresource.org, allows you to take steps in organizing data for your network and contextualizing it using these various tools. But the first thing that you need to know is that the information on PPRA's website uses auto-populated national averages, which means it may not be exactly relevant to you. So in order to contextualize each of these tools to your own network, you'll need to log into your account and input the information that's most relevant to you. We recently updated this backend for those of you who have already been registered users, and this allows you to put in your own costs, what you might expect for life extension in your area for a given treatment, and then use those numbers as you're evaluating all these tools. You can see there are little descriptions on each one of these treatments that say exactly what we mean when we're talking about these things. And it's of course important to know that we don't collect any of your data for any of this. The entire purpose is to be able to contextualize these tools as most relevant to you. So I would recommend everyone goes in there in the top right and creates an account before you get started using all these tools. But all that said, we've been going over a lot of these tools during the webinar, and Lindsay's going to give a little bit of a recap what we did last month.
So once you have created an account and the tools on the website are now customized to you, it's going to repopulate every calculator on the site with information that's much more useful. Also, if you're a presenter and your mic is unmuted, will you please make sure that you're not coming through the computer, that your computer is muted as well, because I think we're still getting some feedback. So please mute yourself if you're not speaking. So remaining service life was last month's webinar. You can find this on the website. And the idea behind remaining service life is answering the question, am I gaining ground or losing ground with this year's treatment plan? And what sort of ground am I gaining or losing? This is an incredibly valuable building block for helping you assess the effectiveness of a plan, but what it doesn't do is help you then prioritize. Since you typically don't have a big enough budget to meet all of your needs, remaining service life doesn't necessarily help you prioritize which treatments you should treat first. That is where, or which projects you should address first, That's where cost-benefit value comes in. It allows you to compare projects and to help you think about how to spend money on the projects that have the greatest impact. What do we mean by impact? When you're looking at a road and you're thinking, what's it going to take to fix this road? How much of my budget is it going to cost me? You're not just thinking about budget and cost. You're also weighing several other factors. Things like, okay, what does this treatment cost, but what alternatives might exist that could be more cost effective? And for that investment, how much life is added to my road? If you weigh the cost of a treatment divided by the life extension that treatment gives you, you arrive at your equivalent annualized cost. And yet again, in the account login section of the site, you're able to toggle those costs and those life extensions to make sure that all these tools are really contextualized exactly to your network. You're also thinking about how many people will benefit from this fix. In other words, what's the daily traffic of this road? And how much life am I adding, right? How much will the road condition be improved? And then you're considering, how does this compare with other projects on my list and within my budget for the year. We just have to say, we have a tremendous amount of respect for you guys out there making these decisions and the pressures, the juggling that comes trying to make insufficient resources address mounting needs. So with that, we will take you to the cost-benefit value section of the website because this tool is designed precisely to help you balance all of those variables in prioritizing projects within a given year.
Yeah, as Lindsay said, there's a lot of variables to juggle. When we're looking at these calculators, they can all be found under the Network Optimization section of the website. So we're going to go over here under Cost-Benefit Value and just start to learn a little bit about it. So this is a helpful tool for all of you on the line who may already be taking steps for your network. This is a great place to explain how you arrived at your decisions, to be able to walk somebody else through. It's completely designed to be able to draw someone through to understand the concept of CBV and the network. So when we look at CBV, we're evaluating sort of 4 different factors. As Lindsay mentioned, the traffic on the road, the life extension, how much life we expect to get out of the project or the treatment, the unit cost, or how much the treatment costs per yard or a square foot, and then the PCI, the existing PCI of the road. Now, when we look at traffic, this is a question that people often ask. We're looking at traffic balanced with a constraint factor. What that constraint factor does, and we'll dig into this on the example, what the constraint factor does is gives us a usable number or an understandable number to be able to evaluate our scores. It won't change the prioritization of the project at all. What it does is sort of shorten the yardstick to be able to say, to be able to look at a scale of 1 to 100 instead of, say, 0.005 to 7,000. It just gives us a usable scoring system. So when we're balancing all these 4 factors, we look at average daily traffic multiplied by life extension divided by the unit cost times the pavement condition, the PCI of the road. And so if we play that out on 2 examples, we've got 2 roads, Road 1 and Road 2, and on the top you can see a reconstruction approach where we're looking at daily traffic of 5,000 with a road that's severely deteriorated and with a PCI of 30. When we work the math out, it ends up giving us a CBV of 15. Now on Road 2, we're comparing the same daily traffic, but a road that's in better condition and is being preserved with a chip seal. In this instance, we get a higher CBV because of the quantitative score that we get and the amount of life we're getting out of that road for the amount of money we're spending on it. So a critical concept is that in this example, for equal traffic, preservation has a higher benefit. Now that may not always be the case depending on how you look at traffic, how much each treatment costs, but this is a great way to be able to quantitatively evaluate which projects are most important at the moment. So when we look at that, we walk through 2 examples, 2 projects, but when we look at a whole network, we often see people organizing their road projects or prioritizing by worst first. You can see that these are organized with the lowest PCI at the top. Now the first 3 roads indicate what our budget can cover if we prioritize those. They tend to be more expensive fixes based on the way the PCI works out. However, with this budget, we can only address 3 roads. When we reorganize them by the column on the right, or the CBV, we can cover more roads with the same budget. And it may be that this south road that we're not able to cover this year gets addressed in next year's annual plan. But we're able to start gaining ground on our network by addressing some of these roads that may be preserved and may delay maintenance later on. So once we walk through the concept or the way that CBV works, we can take you over here to the calculator. Now you notice in the top right, it'll toggle us over to this calculator page. First thing you should know, if you get turned around on this page, that there's a how to use this tool button. If you get a little bit lost, this is a great place to go back to, and it lets you walk through the ways to input this calculator. So I'm gonna go through a little bit of a quick example first, and then we're gonna have James walk you through a network example that he's worked on. When I'm going through these calculators, the first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and input my total network lane miles to give me a sense of how much of the pie I'm able to address. This AADT constraint tends to be between 4 and 10. For the moment, I'm gonna leave it where it stands. This is something that we'll be able to toggle later on to, again, give us those usable scores. I'll enter my budget for the year. I'll have to think about my place values here. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and consider each of the projects that I have either on my list as could do's, should do's, or must do's. I'm going to go ahead and just type in the information. The first thing to do is to enter the road name. And where the segment starts at, this gives us the ability to say, we're not going to address the whole road, but we're going to indicate which segment and where it ends. I'll enter the PCI for the road. This is just an example. And the daily traffic. If you get turned around anywhere, there are these question marks which give you examples of, let's say, oh, I'm working with an urban arterial road or a minor collector road. Gives you a good sense of what that traffic may be if you don't know it already. I'll enter the total pavement width in feet and the number of lanes. These factors allow us, again, to see how much of our network we're addressing. Click Save, and I've got the road right there. The next thing I'm going to do is consider how big that segment is. Let's just say it's 7,000 feet. And then I'll enter which treatment I'm considering using for it. It'll be a double lift of microsurfacing for this one. Notice that it automatically auto-populates the life extension that I expect to get from my user account and the unit cost, how much I expect to spend in my area. So then it goes ahead and gives me the segment cost and my cumulative cost, how much of my budget I'm using up, and then it scores it for a CBZ. So as we go through and enter more roads, we'll have all of these numbers will populate, and it will show us how much of our network we're addressing. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the full example here below, and we can have James walk us through it. James, are you on with us?
Yes, I am back.
So tell us a little bit about this example that you've put together.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, as you all can imagine, I do this type of thing throughout the United States, working with small public agencies just like yourselves to develop, full-blown pavement management programs and plans. And just a little asterisk here, full disclosure, I love this tool by PPRA because for a lot of you out there, you have yet to embark on a full-blown pavement management or network level analysis. This allows you to quickly capture some inputs, or through some inputs, you can quickly capture some huge valued information to make better decisions. So kudos to PPRA on this. I love this stuff. So with that said, I was able to take a recent project that I did for a small city, and this is all realistic here. We have total network lane miles of about 130. This client has about 60 centerline miles. Just kind of know what we're talking about. And their average annual budget is around $500,000 a year. So what I wanted to do is take a look at a mixture of pavements that they absolutely have been getting either complaints on or political interest, things along those lines. So I've got some of those in there, as well as several pavements that are right candidates for specific types of treatments. And as Grace scrolls there for me a little bit, you can kind of see what's happening here. We have anything from a full depth reclamation, if you take a look at Alpine Drive up there, to a major mill and overlay, minor mill and overlay. We've got microsurfacing in there, double lift. We got cape seals, all that good stuff, okay? So before you get to this type of thing, obviously within your user account, you're going to want to define what types of treatments do you think are going to be eligible for your workplace or for your community, okay? And what are those costs and what are your expected life extension numbers? That's what we've got plugged in here. So every typical city we're going to use a number of 55 PCI. So PCI is a pavement condition index number that's usually established through an ASTM standardized condition assessment program that's distress driven, okay? So what I like to tell folks who are interested in using this tool as soon as we get off the webinar that don't have a PCI study, if you know the last time your roadways were constructed, that could be a full depth reclamation, a major mill and overlay, a minor, anything where you're adding structural value, and just use a rate of deterioration of, say, 3 points for an average. So with that said, if you have a road that you're interested in plugging in here, but you don't know the PCI, but you know it's 10 years old, you could project a 30-point decline to a current estimated value of a 70. Hopefully that makes sense. I can address that later through Q&A. So in these examples, I looked at this city and said, you know what? They absolutely have more road projects of political interest and of roads at that 55 critical PCI or lower number than they have a budget for. You saw their budget of $500,000. So what the cost-benefit valuation tool here can do is pin those against each other to see what's the most bang for your buck. That's what this is all about. So as we kind of walk through that, we see River Oaks Drive at the top here. The PCI is a 65. In this climate, for this client, it's a perfect candidate for a Cape Seal. We're expecting an additional 10 years of life extension at a cost of about $4,000. And look at that CBV number over there, 94. That is a large number. That's huge benefit. Whereas if we scroll down just a few and look at Leslie Road, for example, you can see that that pavement is slated for a full depth reclamation. And I will tell you, these are real life scenarios. That roadway is in it's a minor type of collector that's been open to traffic for so many years, and this specific city does not have a tried and true preservation or preventive strategy at the moment. So this is something that I absolutely plan on sharing with them in addition to what we're doing for them. You can see that that's at a cost of $48,000 to fix that 700-foot stretch of pavement. Very expensive, and we know that. And you can see the cost-benefit value number of a 22.7 over there. So if you're pinning projects against each other, or you're talking to mayor, council, street committee, city engineer, public works director, and they're talking to you about roadways that we got to get on a schedule, and you are absolutely interested in preserving your network to the best of your ability, we know you all are, this is a great tool to start doing that to drive a narrative and have conversations about these. So look at that budget line right there. And Grace, are we looking at the worst to first approach here or the CBV approach?
We're looking at the CBV approach, but I'm going to go ahead and click over.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's start here with the worst to first approach, because this is common, and what you're seeing is I'm only able to do about, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 projects with that $500,000.
And what this does, let me just explain what's happening here too. When you click worst first approach, it prioritizes each segment starting with the road that's in the worst condition, or the road that has the worst PCI, and building up from there.
Perfect, exactly. Which is pretty common. You know, we see that a lot in our cities throughout the U.S. This is kind of a typical, in my opinion, unfortunate way that we're attacking this process. So with these types of tools or pavement management, you can really start to establish a data-driven, I say, narrative up front to actually discuss how we're going to spend that $500,000, because we're only looking at 11 or 12 projects, right? So let's now flip over to the CBV approach. And you saw the list grow, right? The list got bigger. So we're now addressing PCIs not driven by the worst condition. We're actually tying a value of having the greatest impact to our network. And you can even still see, if you look throughout there, we're still taking care of roadways such as Professional Parkway with a PCI of a 12, or Gates Avenue with a PCI of 18. We're just trying to find a solid balance where we can still have an impact on our critical PCIs, our critical roadways, but extend the life, therefore improve and maximize the condition in our budget. Simple as that.
Thank you, James. And a couple of things, too, to notice as you try out this calculator. This percentage of lane miles addressed varies based on how much we can cover. So in the worst first approach, we can only cover 2% of our network, or address 2% of our network. In the CBV approach, we're at a higher 6%. A couple more things about this calculator to keep in mind that are built for your use is to see these asterisk projects here. You notice that there's stars below them. They fall below the budget line based on their CBV prioritization. However, they may still fit within our budget. Although they might have a lower CBV, we still might have the money to cover them because they're less costly projects. For example, this $19,000, we could fit above our budget line. So if you go ahead and hover over those, you can learn a little bit about why they're starred and what the calculator is taking into account. For example, this ridgely tracked road is not included under the lane network miles below. Essentially, we want to give the pavement manager or the agency the decision to say, the opportunity to decide which road they want to include in the above. Some more things to consider about this calculator. We had one question about, well, a small town even might have thousands of road segments. Is there a way that I can input my information so that I can use this a little bit easier than within the web application? So to answer that question directly, this is a little bit of a learning tool for you to understand how CBV works. But to make that step easier, we've built an export feature. So all you have to do is click the export feature, go ahead and save, and it opens up a Microsoft Excel document, which you can work within after you've inputted maybe 1 or 2 road segments to give you a sense of how it works. And this gives you the ability to copy and paste, share within your office, email it out, etc. So this is a great tool that we like that's just been added. The other thing that I want to really demonstrate, James went over the impact on the network and why it's important to be thinking about all these things. Another question, like I said, that we often get is how to work this ADT or traffic constraint. So I'll just demonstrate a little bit since we've got so many road segments plugged in. So we've got it set at 9. Usually it lands between 4 and 10. And again, this just changes the CBV display or values, the scale essentially. It doesn't change anything about the prioritization of the project. But if we were to input 1, essentially omitting the constraint, multiplying everything by 1, you can see how it changes the numbers to be vastly different. There's a larger stretch between all of them. Our highest CBV is 846.15, and our lowest is at 8.63. So really what it does is gives us usable or scalable numbers to be able to walk someone through. And you can kind of play with those to see what numbers are most understandable. Right around 9 is where we landed here because it's between 1 and 100 for each of these cost-benefit values. And again, that shouldn't affect your prioritization, your annual plans, or anything like that. It makes it just a little bit of an easier scoring system. So I know we're not quite done yet, but this does feel like a good area to stop and pause for questions. In the bottom left of your webinar display, you can go ahead and type your questions in. Go ahead and just take some time now. If anything's popping up that you'd like us to demonstrate or you'd like James to walk through, let us know.
And while we're waiting on questions to come in, I'd like you to go ahead and think about the power of this tool to answer some of the questions that we explored in the opening when we asked James, what are you hearing from agencies out there? What are they up against in this journey? You know, I can't afford to dress all the roads I need to fix this year. Well, that's true. But as you're looking to justify the condition of your network or why you are selecting a certain treatment plan, recommending a treatment plan to your electeds or to others in your department or to your taxpayers, tools like this let people see that there's a method and an approach and there's deep analysis that goes into that. So in some ways, these tools help get your back a little bit. Also looking to say, I want to stop fixing one road at a time and start improving the network. We hear that so frequently from agencies. Sometimes people are a little ways into that journey. Sometimes people are pretty far into this journey. So these are designed to be tools that help you learn some of these key concepts. They're not designed to be tools that replace a pavement management system. If you go to the top of the website and you look at the network optimization section, and you click on a how-to guide here, and so depending on where you're at in your journey towards stretching your resources further, this is a very basic high-level how-to that starts with 3 basic concepts: assessing pavement condition, optimizing the treatment plan, and then measuring against it. And so as you go through this page, you'll see several different tools there, several different things to consider, ways to approach it, from like really easy low-hanging fruit to much more robust approaches. And you'll just note here that we say yet again, a pavement management system is going to be the very best way to customize all of this exactly to your network and to what you are experiencing with the treatments that you're using in your area. I want to point out a couple of other tools on the site. Go ahead to the treatment toolbox, because this is the network section, but what we know is that the network is linking together one road by one road by one road. And so as you're trying to figure out which treatment is right for my road, we've got 2 sets of criteria here for you. Or 2 tools here for you. One that allows you to explore by pavement criteria. So you can plug in different things that your road might be facing, what the PCI is, what the primary distress is, what road type. And if you have questions about what any of those things mean, there's a question mark up at the top. And Grace is demonstrating here how once you've plugged in certain sets of criteria for your road, the roads that would likely, or the treatments that would likely not be recommended for that scenario gray out, leaving you with treatments in black that are potential options. As you hover over each of the treatments that are featured on the site, you can see what part of the pavement or depth of distress that treatment might address. If you select one, down at the bottom, you see a high-level description of what that treatment does, some basic benefits in terms of cost or impact, and then there's a link to something called the Treatment Resource Center. As we mentioned in the beginning, this website has 500 pages, and many of those pages are located in this Treatment Resource Center, where 18 different treatments have a standardized technical menu. So as you scroll here, you'll be able to pick which treatment you want to learn more about. If you were to, for instance, pick hot-in-place recycling, you can learn about that treatment, all kinds of things under pre-construction, construction. There's a section of best practices where we've organized what different contractors and agencies have learned over the years about how to be as successful as possible with that treatment. And then at the bottom, there's a link to key research, success stories, and photos. So we encourage you to check that out as you're broadening the toolbox, because the bigger toolbox that you bring to the network conversation is going to give you more options for increasing your cost-benefit value, as well as injecting more life into your networks. So we'll let you play with those tools, but I'll dive back to a few of the questions that we see coming in. And Grace and I, just a quick disclaimer, Grace and I work for Vario. We are not pavement managers ourselves, nor are we contractors. But we have several industry experts here with us today. So I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute your phone so you can help me answer these questions. We've got Scott Ossenmacher from Asphalt Materials. We have Steve Garrity. We have James Golden. And we have Rex Eberly with Burkamp. So thank you so much, guys, for taking time out of your day to help join us and answer some of these questions. And the first question is, I believe we answered the first question about street segments. Steve wants to know, what are the pitfalls if a program is started and 5 years in, leadership changes and the program is discontinued? James, do you want to go ahead and answer that question?
Yeah, sure. In terms of program, I'll address this from a pavement management perspective, as well as a little bit of the preservation, project side, if you will. We see this often, as a business owner. I see this, very often where I'm working with a client. We're in 5, 6, 7 years. Leadership changes, as you just referenced, and now it's new ideology maybe coming in, things along those lines. So what we tend to do in those situations is, try to get with the new leadership, if you will, as soon as possible. Have collaborative conversations, if they're open to it. Let's just assume that they're open to it, first and foremost. If they're not open to it, it's a tough sell no matter what, right? You may have an agenda coming into some of this stuff, and I get that. If you are a part of the leadership team in any way, shape, or form, my suggestion is to get the ear of the new individual coming in, have those conversations in a polite and collaborative manner of what you've been doing, how you believe it's been benefiting. If you have a pavement management system, you can point right to year by year. You can show that impact, where if you're leveraging this type of a tool and you have those in an Excel spreadsheet format, you can start showing the value of how you've been impacting the network each and every year. So that's kind of my recommendation, is if you are a part of the leadership or have any buy-in there, hold a meeting, hold a street committee meeting, talk about the benefits that you've been experiencing, things along those lines, because I get it. We have in a political environment, we often have other individuals coming in. It could be coming from the top down or bottom up. It doesn't really matter, with new ideologies and different ways they want to do something. So do your best to try to show them, how this has been working. If you are not doing it, so maybe you've never done because your leadership team existing didn't want to or didn't buy in or didn't believe, but now you have some opportunity with the new leadership team. Talk to other agencies who are doing this. Talk to representatives like myself and the other experts on the line here, so they can, all of us are more than willing to add as much value to the process and to help as many and impact as many as we can. I can promise you that. It's not about sales or anything like that, to be honest with you. We're all about having a greater impact for America's roadways and infrastructures. Get the ear of us. Have us come in, do these webinars, things like that, and show them that there's a better way. Long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps.
One other thing that I would add is, obviously that's always going to be a challenge, and that's one of the big frustrations that we heard from agencies. The remaining service life tool is going to add some value to you in that conversation. For those of you not familiar with it, you can look at the webinar that we did to launch the series. But if you go to About here, it teaches you about the tool. It's a simple way of saying, is this plan going to add or subtract life to my network? If you go to the calculator, you can input an annual treatment plan. One way to consider using this tool is to literally sit down with your electeds and show them, this is the treatment plan that we have, right? And it's going to add or subtract this much life to your network. If you're A, requesting that I treat a road for a certain reason that doesn't make sense with our plan, or B, you just want a wholesale change and you show them the impact quantified of their suggested changes, this can be one tool to demonstrate the value of this. We also see a lot of success from agencies who document their plan and will actually put a stake in the ground and say, hey, as a roadway agency, we practice preservation where we can. We recycle where we can to make the best use of the resources we've already paid for, and we think with a network mentality. And when the DPW department or the roadway manager or whoever inside of a bigger department, or even as just one part of a smaller community, really starts leading out with, here's how we do this, and publishing that to citizens, it can start to have a life and identity of its own that can help you be just a little bit more insulated from some of those political pressures. I want to get to a few more.
Real quick there?
You can, and then I'm going to get to a few more questions.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick. I really want to piggyback of what you just said. Some of my most successful agencies over a long period of time, they've done exactly that, Lindsay. They've pushed this out to the community. They've held open forums and let them know, publish on the website. We have a data-driven approach to the selection process, all in an effort to maximize, those taxpayer dollars. Here's how we do it. So they've been able to get that citizen buy-in, taxpayer buy-in, so they understand what's happening. So that way, if you have a leadership change, they're just going to become a part of that ecosystem more than likely.
Yes, and so when you start getting taxpayers involved in linking the value of what you are doing to making the most of taxpayer resources, you gain a little bit of momentum, and I'm excited to announce that coming in the next couple of months on roadresource.org will be a section of infographics and things designed for you agencies to use in communicating with your taxpayers to celebrate the work you're doing and to talk about these approaches and how it adds value to them. There's one easy question here. Are the life extension factors fixed or can they be modified? Thanks, Craig. They can be modified. They can be modified in two places. If you go in and create an account, Grace will show you right there. Cape Seal, for instance, if you actually get 9 years instead of 10 years, you can delete that. Once you save it at the bottom, it will automatically repopulate all the calculator tools throughout the site. And just a reminder that no one sees this data but you, not even us, not even the builders of the site. That is never shared. It's sacred to you. You can also change this in the calculators themselves if you don't create a profile. So it will publish with national averages. If you're curious where we got the averages from, under the About section of the site, there's a place where you can read about the data methodology, but right there in context of the tool, you can change it. Andrew wants to know, can you use the CBV to prioritize treatments? For example, why is Franklin Avenue a Cape Seal, but Lancaster Road is a microsurfacing with a double lift? They have the same PCI. James, would you give us just a quick answer about why that might be?
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking at my notes right now. So Franklin Avenue was a micro, and the other one, Lindsay, if you have the other one that gentleman referenced.
It was Franklin Avenue was a Cape Seal, but Lancaster Road is a microsurfacing with a double lift, and they have the same PCI. So I can answer while you look that up, that again, on the treatment toolbox, which treatment is right for my road, you can explore there some different options, but James, you might be able to shed a little bit of light specifically on this example and why you picked those different treatments.
Yes. So if you remember, if you recall, Lindsay and Grace were demonstrating during the Q&A hold through network. Well, I forget which tool it was, but the bottom line is you have the opportunity to take a look at different options. Yep, here we go, pavement criteria. So what this allows you to do when you're selecting primary distresses, so Franklin Avenue may be exhibiting just light severity, longitudinal and transverse cracking, for example, okay? And it's pushing out a recommendation of a microsurface double lift, whereas Lancaster Avenue may be experiencing something a little bit more moderate. Maybe it's block cracking, for example. Block cracking may be in there, or maybe it's got medium severity longitudinal transverse cracking with some light severity alligator cracking starting to form. So this is how you can qualify those two types of things, and that's why just the PCI number alone is not often enough to make the right recommendation.
There you go. Yeah, and this isn't, again, just plenty of disclaimers here, this is not intended to be the end-all, be-all in recommending you should use this treatment for your road, but it is designed to give you some things to explore and to see how different things like pavement condition, primary distress, surface type affect which treatment might be a good fit. Couple more questions here I'll take. It seems that a small town would need to build an entire pavement inventory database in order to optimize the use of this tool. Any suggestions? Mark, you're right about that. There's no way around the work required in building that database. What I would suggest, or what I've seen some agencies do, is start by measuring a third of their network each year and doing a third this year, a third next year, a third the next year. In 3 years, you've got yourself a database, and that's a good kind of low-hanging fruit way to start. I recognize that things kind of options range from that to full-scale pavement management systems, and where you start depends on you. I'll kind of connect that and then ask if anyone else wants to correct me to another question down here, which basically says, there's more. Is there an import option instead of an export option? And at this time, we do not have the option to import an Excel database into this database. So someone else is asking, well, do you have any suggestions about how to use this tool if I can't get 1,000 road segments in there? And
my suggestion would be to take the Excel formulas from the export feature and apply them to your existing Excel documents. We've coded out all of those formulas for you. And again, it's a fairly simple equation when it comes down to it. It's just multiplication and division using a certain sequence, right? So you can go ahead and apply this concept to any of your existing databases, materials, Excel sheets, whatever you've got. Again, CBV is just one part of the whole picture. As Lindsay mentioned, we're still thinking about remaining service life, and we're still thinking about life cycle cost, some of those other webinars we went through. But this is a great place to be able to use on your existing materials. Apply the concept to what you have.
Matthew is referencing, or he's asking a question, when referencing full depth reclamation, is there a specific stabilizing additive assumed, such as emulsions, foamed asphalt, or Portland cement, and is that reflected in the life extension calculator?
So Matthew, to answer your question, no, we didn't get into the nitty-gritty on variations for treatments and cost variations. We took, for a lot of these, the assumptions, the average cost across the U.S. and Canada for all full depth reclamation. So it doesn't specifically call out whether you're using lime or fly ash, et cetera. But one thing you can do to learn a little bit about what we mean when we use these words, you can go into that user account and just learn a little bit more about the numbers involved. But to answer your question, no, these are designed to give you a general number, and you can input whatever you expect to pay or whatever you expect to see the life extension for that FDR with a specific emulsion.
One quick question Allison's wanting to know, is there guidance about how to establish the traffic constraint factor? If you go to the calculator, you'll see a question mark. Anytime you're wondering about any tool on Road Resource site, there's a question mark by something there to give you a little bit of guidance. We usually say start with a 7, but as Grace mentioned, the traffic constraint factor will not change the order of priority. It simply adjusts the parameters so that you're looking at numbers that typically range from 0 to 100 instead of 0 to 1,000, which feel a little bit more difficult to wrap your mind around. So when you get in and start playing with the tool, try a few different numbers and you'll see how that impacts the CBV.
And typically, to build on what Lindsay mentioned, the constraint factor becomes more important when you're dealing with networks that have a wide range of traffic. So if you've got major collectors alongside small local roads, you're evaluating sort of a basket with a lot of eggs and maybe 1 or 2 eggs. And so it's an easier way to compare and to consolidate those numbers because we're getting a quantified representation. Makes an easier number, as Lindsay said, to wrap your head around.
We have a question down here I need a little bit of clarity on, and then I'll circle back and answer it once I get some clarity. How does CBV equation show the most effective way for prioritizing? Essentially what it does, if you go to the About page, is it takes into account the balance of traffic, so how many people are impacted by this job, the life extension and cost, so essentially what ground does it gain for me, and PCI, like how much life, what's the condition of this road, how bad off is it. So it kind of takes all that into account to say, where's the biggest bang for your buck, and how to spend and how to prioritize. I'm not sure if that helps, but if it doesn't help, please type in a little bit more clarity about what you're asking, and we'll circle back to that in just a second. I want to quickly take you back to the slides and highlight just a couple things coming up. If you want to know more about this tool, we always get a lot of questions about it. Please remember that we have a super user training coming up October 9th in St. Louis, and that is a one-day training where we take you in depth through every tool on the site. There's a workbook to go with it to help you learn how to use all this. So we'd love to have some of you join us. There was an email sent out, and again, look for an article coming out shortly talking about what that training is all about. And I'll just remind you that everything we do is about helping you do two things: save money and spend smarter. Each of these concepts you can link to from the network optimization section of the site, and each one has tools designed to help you in the really difficult job that you guys have to address growing needs with usually shrinking resources. If we're not answering your questions here or there, they become much more technical in nature. You can go to the resources section of the site and hit Ask an Expert, and we'll make sure that that gets funneled to EMA, ERA, and ISSA technical committees who can give you more specific answers to your questions. And I'll just highlight a couple of ways you can stay connected with what's going on. If you're not already subscribed to the industry e-newsletter, please sign up here. We do a lot of work to curate really interesting articles or research or information and link to. It's a very short newsletter that allows you to click on what you find interesting. So make sure to sign up for that, or invite other people to join who you think might benefit from the educational resources we're curating for you. And follow us on social media. We're regularly posting. We're learners too in this effort, and as we hear interesting ways that people are using the site or tips and tricks, we're collecting that, we're passing it on, we're featuring different little sections of the site you might not know about. We're sharing success stories of agencies who are experiencing great success. So really great way to follow along with us in a bite-sized way. And with that, we are right at 1 o'clock Central Time. So thank you so much for joining us today. Special thanks to those of you who are on the line to answer questions for us. Whether or not we tapped you, thank you for taking time out of your day to do that. And we look forward to continuing to provide really great resources for you at roadresource.org. James, thank you again for all of your work in helping to consult on the tools in the network section and being with us to share your learning today.
Anytime. Thank you all.